I don't think I've ever done a movie without previs or animatic. I think without that, I would not agree to be on set. Because if I'm waiting for production houses to give me money, I would have had half the movies I had right now, you know. How do we get the money, you know? And this is where luck comes in a bit, because you need someone who's willing to take a bit of a risk. So you always have to find ways to own things, or find people that own things and help you out, rather than renting. Avoid rent at all costs unless necessary. Well, if you want to go fast, you have to go alone, but if you want to go far, you have to go with a team.
Exactly. So hello again everyone. We had to change location, so here we are in another library in Paris, again with Ahmed, and let's continue the interview. When you do your movies, how do you find inspiration?
Stories from strangers in the street. Strangers that I don't know, with stories that made me empathize with them. To me, is more powerful than people that I know. They tell me stories, because if you're able to make me attached to you with a story, even though I don't know you, it's very powerful. So stories from strangers and music in general, specifically classical music and all music that is composed for movies, is very powerful, because there's usually no lyrics, so you have to imagine it and be able to imagine a story with that music. So it really helps you become independent with your mind whenever you listen to. That's the two main sources of inspiration for me that makes me write something new. That could be a movie.
When you write, what is your process of creating to go from an idea to being on set shooting with a team of motivated people?
Pre-visualisation is the key word. You know, like storyboards and stuff like this. I do something that's a bit weird, but it's like using a software or some kind of a 3D program or something like this, where I'm able to just recreate the place that I know I'm going to shoot in. For example, if we're going to be shooting here and we have a movie scene in that particular table with two people, what I do is that I would grab my phone, a free app, photo scan the place. I'll get a more or less accurate place with the measurements. I go on my computer and I just try to really have that in my computer. I have an accurate measurement and I start putting the camera with a 3D model of a character, and I start just putting them together in an edit to see and feel the story with the music. And from there you really see if your idea works or not. And that's what you call a pre-visualization, you know. So pre-vis is really the best way for me to go from pre-production to production, you know.
Do you do like animatics or cheap versions of your movie before you actually shoot them?
Yeah, so that's what pre-vis essentially means. It means the cheap version of the movie. Sometimes I even just grab my phone and I shoot some stuff and actually get me or you and act cheaply, quickly. It's definitely my best way to really see if the movie works, especially for the editor, to see if the pacing works, if it doesn't work. Maybe the scene is not necessary, so we can save a lot of budget just by cutting the scene out by doing previs. So I don't think I've ever done a movie without previs or animatic. I think without that, I would not agree to be on set. I would really want to know how it looks overall on the computer first.
Cool. Yeah. Usually, if it works with a cheap version, it will work even better with a proper version of the movie. Have you ever tried to work with productions company in France so that they can help you find money and stuff like that, or have you always worked by your own?
I've always worked by my own, to be honest. I haven't really looked at other productions. I've done it once before in one of the movies I've worked on, which was a military movie in the forest. So two soldiers just running away completely from war, so it's like a fugitive kind of scene. And I found a production company that didn't fund the movie, but they gave cameras and lights all for free. So in a way, they saved the budget instead of paying money. So I have contacted production houses to provide us things that could otherwise be expensive, but I haven't contacted production houses for money, because at the time I was still starting out, like I was still making movies, so it was very difficult to convince someone that, hey, I'd like to do that. But as I move forward with the team and everyone, and I have more leverage to show something, I'm starting to do that. But for now, what I do is I just ask people to help make the movie instead of help raise the money for the movie, because that's a bigger ask. So far, the movies I didn't really need the money from production houses so far. So. And
usually it's way faster, I think, when you just do it by yourself than waiting for someone to help you and find budget to make proper file and sending applications to find money. This usually takes months.
Well, if you want to go fast, you have to go alone. But if you want to go far, you have to go with a team.
Exactly.
So it depends on what you want to do in the movie. But money and all of that, that's like when you're really planning to do a series or something, and it's like you really want to achieve something far away. You can't do this by yourself, then definitely you have to start looking for production houses to do that. But for short films, if I did, that means I would have never made a movie. Because if I'm waiting for production houses to give me money, I would have had half the movies I had right now, you know. So no, I have not contacted them because I was not really willing to wait for them, you know. That's only when it's needed. But for short films, you don't need a production company. You can find a way, for sure.
And do you think there is an industry of short movies in the way that you can make a living out of it?
If you're an influencer, yes. But other than that, no.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to have a following as a base, in fact. And I think short film is quite selective, and just like feature, to be honest. But feature is more open, actually, because at least if you got hired on that feature, you'll be able to work for a few months and you have something stable for a few.
Yeah.
But short films, the problem with that is that you have to be an influencer in a way. But personal people that are just still starting out, no. I think short films is just a great way to start, or a way for you to really be get into the feature film business. If you take references of Whiplash and all these kind of movies, that's how they did do it, you know? Like they really want to show that they can do a short film, but the problem is that the producers usually want to look at the short film and then they still want to have one thing from you, is that, are you able to do a longer version of this movie? Because yeah, you're great at short film business, but the producer doesn't trust you to do a 60-minute version of that. Can you resist doing 3 months of shooting instead of 1 week? Because 1 week is not the same as 3 months of shooting, you know? Traveling all over the place, having 20 locations is not the same as having 2 locations.
Yeah.
So producers have that in mind, which brings us to the question of, so how do we make our first feature if we never know?
Exactly, you need experience, but you don't have it until you haven't.
And this is where your question before comes, which is, how do we get the money? You know, and this is where luck comes in a bit, because you need someone who's willing to take a bit of a risk. But you'll never get enough money for your first feature. Your first feature is always going to be tight.
It should be, I think it should be really cheap to make.
Yeah.
Super cheap. Like
could not, you know what?
Like
this is it.
Room or
this is it.
I don't know,
exactly
like Cube
exactly.
Or the Blair Witch.
What's the name of the director that did, his name is Robert Rodriguez or something like that. He wrote a book about how to make a feature film.
For nothing.
Without nothing.
Oh, that's cool.
It's one of the best film books out there that I suggest. A Rebel Without a Crew.
Okay.
He had very little crew, had 5 people, and they kept changing every time, and he made a success feature film out of that. You know, the book is not him writing about his life. He's actually a journal. Like, he's writing every single day what's happening.
Oh,
it's a journal. And the beginning is him striving, and at the end of the book, it was basically his success story. And he managed to make an 1.5-hour movie with cars and all kinds of things. Equipment, he got it for free. And also the first thing he said and the last thing he said in his book is buy, don't rent. Buy, don't rent. It's like, when you own something, it's way better than renting. Because renting is cheaper in the short term, but it's way expensive on the big term, on the budget paper. It's way more expensive. So you always have to find ways to own things, or find people that own things and help you out, rather than renting. Avoid rent at all costs unless necessary. And he did just that. Every chapter is every stage of the film. Pre-production, production, post-production. The book was basically all about how he made that movie, his first feature. When he showed it to producers, not only were they able to trust him that he can manage to do a 2-month shooting, but when they asked him how much it costed, and they saw that, oh, so how much did you do, like 500,000, 1 million? When he said 10,000, the producers were in love with him. The producers really love it when you find ways to get something really good for low price. For them, it's a business.
How do you feel personally about making a feature movie? Do you feel that you have the shoulders right now at 24 to make a feature movie, or do you think you're still not experienced enough?
I believe that the next one.
Next one will be a feature movie?
Yeah, and it's going to be that one of those lab rat, you know, very, very difficult thing to do. And I'm not expecting the feature to blow up, but it's an experience of where we try to have, with the money that we have, there's like a specific amount of money, and let's make a feature with that money. Whether it becomes good or not, let's see what happens. Yeah. So the next one will be a long one, for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah, and the script is already written, actually.
Okay, is there a filmmaker that you admire?
It changes every era or every year, yeah, but I think Peter Jackson, because I think he really did a great job, forgetting about the work for a second that he did, no matter what movie he worked on. I think that the fact that he was so passionate in a book that he read, and he really translated his passion so well that you really feel it so much, is a skill that is very difficult to have. And when I saw his works, I loved it as much, if not more, than the books itself. So it's crazy to take someone's art and expand it and do better than that art. And I think that's a beautiful skill to have.
Do you have a favorite movie? It's a very tough question, but...
Either Harry Potter sequel, particularly the 7th one, the last one, I think, or the first Lord of the Rings. I can't really touch between those two because they both gave me some very important, like in terms of like inspiration. So, and they were the ones that pushed me into filmmaking in general. So,
well, I think you're gonna say the same. But if there was a movie that you wish you had directed, which one it would be? The Lord of the Ring again?
I think it would be the first Harry Potter, the very first one. Yeah, and I think the Magic Mind, the latest movie that we've done, you know, shows the style of what kind of style that I have and what kind of world I have. If you watch it, you can maybe see a longer version of it, and this is the kind of version maybe that I wish I would have directed in the first one. But hands down, the director and the other directors that worked on the other movies, hands down to them, they did a great job. So,
do you have any advice or tips that you would tell someone who begins in his filmmaking journey?
I think it's really location scouting being one of the most important parts. Pre-vis or /storyboard. Nowadays you have so much tools. It's all about making the movie before making the movie.
Yeah, you can just draw something.
Just draw something, or even use your phone and just really do a crappy little thing, you know. And if you don't have people even to help you act in that little crap thing, just shoot yourself doing it. Simple as that. And you have so much technology nowadays that even with AI coming out, that you can almost do everything with a few clicks. You need to see your movie on an image sequence, you know, either through drawings or through pre-vis. Because, you know, they're very important and they will determine a lot of the stuff from the other departments, the production design, the lighting. It really, location is what you will begin with. And even equipment. You might not need as much equipment because of the type of location. Maybe there's so much natural light.
Last question. I asked ChatGPT to ask a question to a movie director. So the question is, how do you handle creative differences on set, whether with your crew, actors or producer? And what strategies do you use to maintain your vision while fostering collaboration? You want me to repeat that?
Well, great question. Usually when there's a creative difference, you need to know why there's a creative difference. Because if there's a creative difference, then it comes from you. Because when you get people on board in a project, your first ever goal is to get them all on the same vision. And you need to get this straight up from the beginning, because if you don't, you're going to have a lot of creative differences on the go. And that's why at the beginning of the first meeting needs to be really talking about the script and saying what everyone thinks, because everyone will have different opinions, and then trying to first get ideas, because you might have some ideas that are better than yours. When you gather everything, then you really explain to them what kind of vision you have for the script, so that they all have the same picture. Sometimes they'll have creative differences, but when they do, you remind them of the vision that you're trying to go for that, and because it has been agreed upon before and they all share a common goal, because they're working with you on the movie, otherwise they wouldn't be part of it if they don't like the vision. And for sure there's always going to be a common ground, because if the vision is a common ground, then the differences will be resolved into something that you might even like from the other person, and if not, the person will be convinced. But vision matters, because if the person is not convinced and neither is you, then that means that the vision is not the same. It starts from the beginning. You need to be sure from the very first place that you have the same vision. And if you don't, then I'm not saying it's too late, but maybe you have to go back and talk about the script again. Yeah, so we have to waste time to bring back the script and really talk about it again. So start off from the first place, explain the script, make sure everyone has the same vision.
Again, it's preparation.
You got that right. As I said, my first ever and my last ever thing I would like to say in this interview is prep. Always prep, you know, and that includes sharing vision, location.
Okay, Ahmed, thank you again for this interview.
I'm very happy with this interview as well. I actually enjoyed it. I really like these kinds of questions, makes me think, and thank you for this as well.
You're welcome. So I'll put a link of everything you've done. You can contact him if you want to see his movies. I think you have a PDF somewhere on your Instagram bio.
Yeah, you have mine.
Where we can see some of your movies.
The links, yeah, 100%.
Thank you and bye. See you later.
Bye-bye.
And cut.